So let's talk a little bit about No Man's Sky. And I think whether you like the game or not, it's been one of the most interesting games to have been released, at least in recent memory, and also one of the most disappointing. And so with the 1.3 update coming in probably just a couple days, I want to go over some things about this game, maybe some of the things that disappointed us, and some of the more optimistic things about the game, and then what we sort of expect going forward. And about my Galactic Hub Journey videos, so I ran into a little bit of a snag. I ran into another spatial anomaly, and Polo's asking for level 10 creatures discovered. Obviously that's going to take me a long time to do, and I don't want to move on to another system until I can satisfy that. So I'm trying to get that, and that's probably going to take me a long time, and I don't think I'm going to get to the Galactic Hub before the update drops. So I'm certainly going to try, but I don't think I'm going to have enough time to do it. Hopefully there's no universe or galactic reset when the update comes in. Hopefully everything just kind of stays the same so the hub isn't wiped out or anything like that. And I don't think, even with the previous updates, nothing was completely wiped out. Of course, we didn't have base building after the first update. But anyway, so let's get into it. First, some of the more disappointing aspects of the game. So the game was hyped up pretty highly by the community. I would say roughly 6 months before release. And the game had a lot of hype going in to it anyway, but this was one of the reason it had a lot of hype is because nothing really like this had been done before, and I think a lot of people were thinking it was going to be a lot more than what Sean Murray and Hello Games had in store for us for the release. And I think it was in an earlier interview, but I think Sean Murray mentioned that everything they wanted to have in the game was not going to be there when they released the vanilla version, you know, the original release about a year ago. So I think what this sort of brings light to is Hello Games, they always said they were a small indie developer. Now, when you have these other, bigger developers like, the people who are making games for Bethesda or 2K or Electronic Arts, they can pump out games. It takes them, as it is, 5 years at least to get a game like, Fallout 4 or Skyrim released. And even then, sometimes, it's not everything people want it to be. Hello Games had only a handful of people working on this game, and because they couldn't, for one thing, they couldn't afford to pay everyone, or they couldn't afford to pay more people to do it. And then on top of that, somewhere in, I can't remember what year it was, but they had a flood in their studio, and they lost a lot of things related to the game in the flood. Excuse me. Oh, must be that time of year. So, they were met with a lot of difficulties during development, and they knew they were going to have a deadline to meet at some point. With Sony publishing the game, they knew they were going to have a deadline. As it is, they had to delay the game a couple months from the original release date, and even then, it didn't have everything they wanted. So I think this kind of proves that, with any game, and especially this type of game that really has no analog at the moment. Well, it's starting to have some, but it's really difficult to work with. And so I think people need to understand that this is like trying to do something that no one's really done before. Granted, they're using a procedural algorithm to generate all the planets. They didn't do it themselves, but there's a lot of programming that has to go in and around that to make everything function just on a basic level. So I think the hype And speculation, within about 6 months or so of the release, generated a lot of unrealistic expectations about the game. And so when the game released, and we had some things to do, but not a whole lot. And I think everyone was pretty bummed out that they just didn't have enough to do. Okay, so another thing is planet generation has little to no variety. When I talk to a lot of people, they say, oh, well, there's only 5 planets. But there's 7 or 8 different types of planets biome-wise. We have the paradise planets, which have no hazards and also but no special elements to collect usually. Cold planets, hot planets, toxic planets, radioactive planets, desert planets, and barren planets. I think that's, 8? So really there's 8 different types of planets, and you already know what type of planet it's going to be if you do a scan in space, and it tells you what specific special element is there, and those elements are specific to that type of planet. But what I'm really talking about also is terrain generation. The algorithm that they're using for terrain generation is not very advanced. We don't have areas of a planet where there are mountain ranges and then other areas where it's all flat. We do have bodies of water, but they're basically just lakes and ponds. We have no river systems, and also there's no dynamic water either. So once you've seen one planet, with the exception of the type of flora that there is, you've almost seen them all. And that's why when people talk about the planets, they say, well, they're all samey, because the terrain generation is basically the same. Now, once in a while, you do run into a planet that seems very different than the others, but it's kind of on rare occasions, and I'm not sure how or why that happens. But for the most part, they all sort of look the same. And even across the same type of biome planets, let's say we're talking about like a hot planet, all of the hot planets seem to have similar flora, and the differences between the flora are so subtle that they all end up looking the same anyway. So it kind of gives you the impression that, well, they said that nothing is the same from planet to planet, but it sure looks the same to me. So there's not enough variation in, I guess, the assets that they're pulling from to generate this flora as well. So that's, another thing that kind of makes them all look the same. Okay, so moving on, the vanilla version of the game had pretty underwhelming combat. You had only 2 weapons available on your ship. You had the photon cannon and the phasers, the phase beam. And that was it. And a lot of people were complaining that you couldn't get into dogfights in planet atmospheres. I believe that has been updated, but I'll talk about the updates later. But in the vanilla version, it was pretty bare bones. Also, to go along with that, there's no real faction support, and this is kind of along the lines of what happened with Skyrim, where it didn't really matter what your allegiance was with one faction or the other. No faction was going to attack you for being aligned with another faction. For instance, if you have a high level with the Korvax, your friendship level, it's not going to affect your relationship with the other 2 races, the Gek and the Viking. And then another example is, so the Gek and the Viking, they don't like each other very much. So suppose you have a high friendship level with the Gek. If you go into a Viking system, you would assume that the Vikings might attack you, but they don't. There's no recognition there. So now that's not a terrible thing, because right now, as it is, in order to get blueprints, you have to have a high friendship level with actually each of the 3 races. But this kind of takes away from the faction aspect away as well. And then there's also the pirates. So I do know that if pirates attack a freighter and you start attacking the pirates, So long as you don't accidentally hit one of the good guy ships, the good guy ships will fight with you and try to destroy the pirates. But for some reason or other, the they don't do much damage to the pirates. It seems like you have to kill them all. Okay, and then here's the big kicker. All the way up to the release, the idea was we're all supposed to get to the center of the galaxy or the center of the universe. I think there was some confusion about that. And when people finally did it, I think they were pretty disappointed to find, spoiler alert, that it just takes you to another galaxy. Now, in the beginning, like several months before the release, that's actually what we wanted. But the problem is going to a galaxy now has little to no meaning because there's really nothing left to accomplish in the game. There's nothing left to collect. There's no story to progress. Now, I'm not a huge story guy, but if there's nothing else in the game to collect or accomplish, you need something to sort of make you want to continue. There's all of these planets in this game, but now they basically have little to no consequence. So I think that was a major disappointment of the game. Also, we have a number of craftables in the game that are not being used. For instance, the Lemium, Magmox, Hero, or Herox, however you pronounce it. I believe at least a couple of those, it says, are used for ship construction. Well, we're not constructing our own ships, and I'm not even sure we're going to be able to do that in this next update. So I'm not sure why those elements or those craftables are even there. It's not really cost effective to make them and to make them and sell them. So I don't really know what the plan is for those, but that's kind of a big question mark. Like why are they even there? So there's that. Well, let's talk about some of the positive things now about this game. Obviously, the updates that came with it were free, and they added more things to do. The first update added the ability to build your own base and sort of manage your resources and things from there, which makes things a lot more convenient. It also gives you something else to do. I'm not sure if 1.1 added the freighters or not. I think they did. And freighters were great as well because if you didn't want to go back to your base, you could store certain types of items, like specifically items that are used for upgrades to your ship or your multi-tool or your exosuit. Like a lot of the green elements, your aluminum, copper, nickel, and whatnot, you can store those on your freighter, so that way you don't have to go back to your base to get them. And then you can store items at your base like the condensium and antrium and those sort of things that are used to build base objects. And then on top of that, you could even put a trade kiosk at your base and sell things from there. So that was great. Also, it had farming, so you could farm all the special things that you could get in the game, the Gravitino balls, albumin pearls, and then the special elements as well, the Chrysogen, Feridium, Fervidium, Spadonium, etc. And, if you wanted to use those, you could grow them in your base. So that added quite a bit to do. The 1.2 update added vehicles, which I was a little bit underwhelmed with the vehicles, even though I really wanted vehicles. The problem is you had to build this geobay on every planet you wanted to use them, and these geobays, I think you had to have 2 dynamic resonators. Dynamic resonators are a pain in the butt to craft, and then they're they're a little bit expensive to buy, so it's almost not even worth it to use the vehicles. Now at my base, I have a Nomad which can go over water and fly around terrain pretty easily. So I mean, that's worth it. But if you're just on a planet looking around, it's actually better to just, you might as well just use your ship, because we can fly a little bit lower now than in the vanilla version. So, and now I don't know. So the 1.1 and the 1.2 updates also added a number of new sort of content as far as elements go. And the 1.2 update changed the way that we obtain blueprints, which that is actually a lot better because it extends the gameplay a little bit. I started my game over a while back on this game save that I'm using for my Galactic Hub journey, and if any of you have been watching that, you would know that I don't yet have Warp Reactor Theta. And I'm really hoping that if I get this level 10 creature discovery, that it's going to be Warp Reactor Theta, because that would help me along quite a bit. But I really don't know what it's going to be. So there's that, and also you now have to buy the blueprints with the nanite clusters at the space stations. So you're kind of, there's a little bit more economy involved with obtaining the blueprints. You're not just going to find them, randomly on planets, and usually end up finding ones that you already had, which I don't know why it did that. That was a bad design choice. I don't know how difficult that is to get around, but I mean, that was pretty bad. And so there's a lot to work with this game. And I think going forward, we know that the 1.3 update is going to add planetary portals. I don't know how that will be useful, but perhaps we'll find out once we have it. And then more of a story element, which hopefully will add some more things to do in the game. But my hope is that it's not just simple, fetch quests, like go get this and bring it here, go get this and bring it here. I hope there's more of a, an explanation of why things are the way they are in the game. That would, I think, would be more interesting for at least the people that are still playing this game. And hopefully, I hope they continue to refine terrain generation. I know it's probably not easy to do, but let's see if we can get river systems in the game. Let's see if we can get dynamic water. We don't necessarily have to be dragged along with it. That I don't think that would really matter to me, but it would just be something more to look at. Let's see if we can get mountain ranges, in this part of the planet, and then over here it's flat. We can have the same biome, that's fine. I understand why that is the way it is, but let's see if we can, separate terrain types. So that's kind of what I wanted to cover with No Man's Sky. I know it's a controversial game. I know some people were upset because, Sean Murray, Hello Games, they lied to us and da-da-da-da-da. They didn't lie to us unless you count omission as a lie. But the problem is, I don't think Sony would have allowed them to be completely forward about what is and what is not in the game at the release, because there may have been some legal obligations there with their publisher. I know that was the case with the release date. If it were up to them, they would have spent at least a couple more years on this game. But Sony had already, screwed the pooch as far as, talking about it in the years prior to that, and people were already saying, well, this game's just never going to come out. But, that's how every game is. It takes years to develop, and they don't really talk about it until maybe, I would say at most a couple years before it releases. But a lot of times these days it's a matter of months. Fallout 4 was a matter of months. Shadow of War, a matter of months. I think the ones with the longest sort of hype train these days might be Grand Theft Auto. I know Grand Theft Auto's been dragged out. I know the Zelda games get dragged out a lot, but that's usually because, excuse me again, speaking makes you burp if you don't do it all the time. I know the Zelda games, they always get drug out, but that's mostly because they always get delayed. But the difference with Zelda is that the people working on the game are also sort of the ones publishing it. You know, so it's developed by Nintendo, published by Nintendo, and so they can kind of do whatever they want. You know, in Hello Games' case, Hello Games is their own entity, and Sony employed them, you know, to make this game, you know, to publish it. So or maybe it was the other way around. Hello Games had this game, and so they found Sony, you know, to publish it for them. But then, as a result of that, Sony said, "Okay, but we need, you know, X, Y, and Z," and one of those was probably the release date. So, you know, that's how it goes. So we'll be getting the patch notes probably pretty soon. If not today, then probably tomorrow, and then the 1.3 update pretty soon, and I'll probably do another video going over the 1.3 update. And so yeah, I guess that's what we have to look forward to. And you know, if you're still playing this game, great. But if you're not, if you have the game and you kind of put it on the shelf, you know, at least read about what 1.3 adds. I'm hoping that it adds more faction support. It talks about adding a story, and I'm hoping that part of that is a little bit more happening between the factions, at least on an active level, not just in the lore. So anyway, here's hoping. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you next time.